20th, 2019, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. I just got off a downtown 6 local train at the Canal Street station. I'll be doing a walking video of Chinatown, Manhattan today. I know it's a little bit noisy, but that's how New York is. I've walked through this station numerous times, including doing a narrated video of Canal Street being an ugly subway station.
Hey, can I be on your video?
Yeah, why not? What's up?
How you doing?
All right. So I'm getting off at Canal and Lafayette Street. This is the eastern end, no, the western end of Chinatown. Looks like there's a ambulance coming down. New York Presbyterian. This is the western end of Chinatown. If you're interested, I also did a narrated walk of Canal Street throughout its entire length, going from east to west. But today I'll be focusing on Chinatown specifically. So I'll be heading into Old Chinatown, which is the first developed area of Chinatown. Canal Street is especially popular with tourists because many merchants here sell their wares and accessories on the streets. So the first immigrant who arrived to Chinatown, the first Chinese person, was Ken. He's claimed to have arrived in the area in the 1850s, and he founded a cigar store on Park Row, which is south of here, south and east of here. You can see we're in Chinatown here. There's no denying it. All the Chinese restaurants and dumpling places. Here's a Vietnamese sandwich. Like I said, all these vendors are selling their wares. It's a good place to get souvenirs if you're visiting New York. Okay. But Ken arrived around 1858, selling cigars. So what happened was he inspired other Chinese immigrants to arrive in the area, and they actually started a monopoly in the cigar business centering around Mott Street. And Mott Street was the area of the first Chinese immigrants. Many of the Chinese settled along Mott Street, and Ken and his friends would rent out bunk beds to immigrants arriving into the United States. Manhattan's Chinatown is one of the oldest Chinatowns in the developed world, if not the oldest. But a lot of the Chinese immigrants immigrated to Chinatown from the West due to increasing discrimination and laws against the Chinese, such as the Chinese Discrimination Acts. Many of these Chinese immigrants were unskilled or uneducated, so they ended up doing a lot of service businesses, such as hand laundries and restaurants and stores. Here's something I recommend everyone try once in their life. That's if it's not against your religion or anything, is right here, the roast pork and the roast chicken. Here's a musician playing on the street. Here you can get a lot of vegetables and other groceries for relatively cheap prices compared to the brick and mortar stores like Whole Foods Market and your local supermarkets around New York City. There was an article I read that said that don't be wary of the low prices of the Chinese merchants' vegetables because they actually come direct from the farms. So they're not of any less quality than the groceries that you'll find in the supermarkets. And I think I can attest to that because I've had many of these vegetables that come from the streets here and they're delicious. This fruit here is very fragrant, so I'll tell you that much. So Canal Street actually has a canal underneath it. It used to be a sewer. You can find out more about that on my Canal Street walk. But I'm just about to walk onto Mott Street, which is one of the main streets of Chinatown, along with Canal Street, East Broadway, and Bowery. Canal Street also was the first diamond district in New York City. Now the diamond district settled on 47th Street in Midtown. The traffic isn't too bad right now. Usually it's more crowded at this time of day because of the cars traveling to and from the Manhattan Bridge as well as the Holland Tunnel to New Jersey. Right now it's about 4:30 p.m. So I'm making a right onto Mott Street, and I'll talk about Mott Street when I get on. So the early days of Chinatown were dominated by gangs. The gangs were actually popularized in a lot of movies such as The Gangs of New York and The Godfather, and the Chinese gangs were very strong around this area. Most notably the ⁵ and the ⁴ The ⁴ control most of Mott Street and the surrounding area, and the ⁵ controlled most of the area north of here. So you can see a wide variety of different businesses here, selling goods, restaurants, different types of cuisines. When many people think of Chinese food, they don't think of different types of cuisines, but there's many different types of Chinese food. There's Northern Chinese, Southern Chinese, there's food from Western China, there's even like Asian blends. So you have to try them all to understand. But Mott Street was originally populated by Chinese from the Cantonese area of Chinatown, which included Hong Kong and Guangdong and Guangzhou area. That's why you may hear a lot of Cantonese around this part of Chinatown. And actually one of the earliest settlers of Chinatown along Mott Street came from the city of Taishan, which is a southern city in the Guangdong province of China. Looks like they're doing some road work here. Mott Street traditionally is very bad for traffic because of how narrow it is, and actually in general so even though there's a lot of Cantonese speakers here and some Taishan dialect. Many of the Chinese who are newly immigrating to Chinatown are speaking Mandarin. Mandarin is the official dialect of China. In fact, it's very rare you'll find a Taishanese speaker right now. Most of the gangs and tongs now call themselves associations. These associations are more business oriented now. They organize as a group, maybe in groups of like 100 or 200 families, and they'll own a property. That's why gentrification has been so slow in Chinatown. And for those of you who don't know, gentrification is when an area becomes developed and it pushes out the lower income residents and arguably its culture as well. But because these associations hold so much property here, and like tens of families, hundreds of families may own property, it's very hard to get them to sell to anyone else. So this is ⁴ Street and Doyers Street, and where I'm about to take you is the bloodiest street in American history. This is Doyers Street, otherwise known as the Bloody Angle. It's here that many gangs waged war, and underneath my feet are many dead bodies. Although now today you won't find any record of the violent history of Doyers Street, but it's here. This is where the Hipsings and the Anlongs waged war against each other in classic gang warfare, and it's called the Bloody Angle because of that 90-degree angle around the corner. Famously, gangs would hide around the corner and hatchet anyone walking past, which is bloody to describe. But here is Nam Hua Tea Parlor. It's the first dim sum parlor in Chinatown and has been here since 1920. So Doyers Street also has an underground. I'm not exactly sure where the underground entrance is located, but many of the gangs would use the underground to smuggle supplies and hide from authorities and everything. And back then, these gangs and tongs were so strong that even the city was afraid to crack down on them because they had so much power. But this short segment street, Doyers Street, is almost finished now. It had a very violent past. There was even gang warfare in the early 80s. It wasn't until the late 80s, early 90s that violence in Chinatown finally came to an end due to many of the leaders growing old and the younger generation being a little bit more wise. But it also has to do with the changing economic culture of the city. So this is Bowery, which becomes Chatham Square. Chatham Square is the, I would say, the gateway to Chinatown because 7 streets intersect here. I believe they're Bowery, Wharf Street, Division Street, East Broadway. There's Oliver Street there. But yeah, too many streets. But the center of Chatham Square is in that direction. However, I'll be covering that a little bit later. Now I'm turning my camera to the right. Those stairs descend down to the Doyers Street Tunnel, which I was talking about earlier, that went to the gangs. Oh my goodness. This is not a good sight to see. That man is completely out, but I'm sure he'll get the help he needs. I don't like to see people in that state. It's just horrible to see. But it's important to help out the less fortunate and donate when you can and help out society. I do wish the city would do more to help out homeless. But here's the end of Mott Street. Now I'm at ⁴ Street, which is the southern border of Chinatown. Chinatown is bordered by the Civic Center on the south. To the west, it's bordered by Tribeca, which is an acronym for a neighborhood that stands for the triangle below Canal Street. Little Italy to the north, although you could say that Chinatown also is within Little Italy, or Little Italy is within Chinatown. That's how big Chinatown is. To the east, it's bordered by the Lower East Side. And to the north, it's also bordered by Soho. Soho and Nolita. And to the southeast, it's bordered by two bridges. So now I'm making a right onto Mulberry Street, and I just tripped on the sidewalk. The city should do a better job maintaining these sidewalks. Here's Mulberry Street. It's famous for the numerous funeral homes on this block. Well, I should say in this section, because there's more funeral homes up ahead. To the left of me is Columbus Park. Historically, it was the the center of the 5 Points neighborhood. 5 Points was a very, very dangerous neighborhood back in the day, run by gangs, and it was very dirty and unsanitary. This is Moscow Street, formerly known as Park Street. It was also one of the earliest streets settled by the Chinese. And I'm going to point my camera up. Here's a Greater Chinatown Community Association. And this is a fried dumpling spot, which I highly recommend. You can get 5 pieces for $1.50. It's also been online in many papers and recommendations. But I'm about to walk into Columbus Park so I can show you what it looks like, what a recreational space in Chinatown looks like. Here's the Columbus Park playground. There's a lot of people playing basketball right now. A very good day to do so because of how warm it is. This building, I believe, is a recreational facility. They're doing a lot of work on it, which is why it's all fenced off. So right across the street from me over here is the Civic Center neighborhood. This section of the Civic Center is infamous for its many prisons and courts. Okay, this is what I would consider the main section of Columbus Park. This area is a popular gathering spot for many of the elderly and a lot of the Chinese locals who have been here for a very long time. It's very popular to see people playing cards here and gambling and doing other kinds of things to pass the time. Here is a statue of Sun Yat-sen, the founder of the Republic of China, as well as a very influential politician. Some people playing their music on erhus. So what I'm actually going to do now is walk east on Doyers Street towards Chatham Square again, because I want to show you the eastern part of Chinatown, which is the newer part. Just walking down the street is getting me very hungry, smelling all this food. I'm not particularly keen about smelling cigarette smoke though, but that's the way it is. So here I am back on Mott Street. Here is the famous Chinatown ice cream factory. I presume it's going to be very busy today because it's so warm out. Like I said, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Yep, look how full that is. Across the street is the Gi Pao Oak Tin Association. Many of these association buildings will show themselves very elaborately on the exteriors. Here's a seafood and produce store. Here's a bubble tea place, the VV Bubble Tea. Also very popular now because of how warm it is. So this is Bowery. A little bit north of me, 1 block north, is the Manhattan Bridge, which connects Chinatown to downtown Brooklyn. Here's Confucius Plaza, home to many, many residents of Chinatown. It's also called Confucius Plaza because there is a giant statue of Confucius at the end, which I'll show you very shortly. So here is the statue of Confucius, a little bit blocked by the tree leaves, but he's here. The great philosopher Confucius, also known by his Chinese name as Kongzi. I'm going to walk back down to Chatham Square, and I'll show you another prominent statue. Notoriously, people are very frequent to cross the street against the light here. So if you're driving, be very careful of pedestrians who cross without the right of way. Okay, it's red light, but no traffic here, so it's safe to cross. So here I am in the center of Chatham Square. There's a lot of pigeons here being fed. This right here is a memorial to people who have lost their lives in various wars, dedicated by the American Legion post 1291. And here is let me get behind the sun here so it's not as bright. I hope it's not too bright to see on camera, but this is a statue of ⁴ᴷ⁶⁷, who is most commonly associated with the Fujianese population of China, and also was a major contributor against the end of the Opium Wars. So I'm headed east on East Broadway. It's called East Broadway because it's east of Broadway. And this is the newer part of Chinatown, settled by mainly immigrants from the Fujian region and the Fuzhou city. Many of them immigrated here from the 1980s to the 1990s due to the Cantonese population already being settled along Mott Street and the surrounding area. but many of these people know how to speak Mandarin in addition to their native dialect from Fujian. Also, they immigrated here because the Fujianese dialect is unintelligible to the Cantonese dialects from Guangzhou and Guangdong. So it made it very hard for these immigrants to make a living and especially work for a Cantonese business because of the language barrier and cultural differences. So instead they set up their own community here. They also face discrimination from the Cantonese population. And that statue of ⁴ᴷ⁶⁷ that I showed you actually was erected by many of the population here in Chinatown from the Fujianese region. Sorry about that. A lot of the local bus companies also operate on East Broadway. You see, I'm not the only one sneezing around here. It's warm out and the allergens are out in full force. Thankfully, I'm not getting them that bad, but many people have them a lot worse. But the local bus companies here can take you to many destinations along the East Coast for very affordable prices. I was able to get a bus ticket to Philadelphia and back for around $10. So that just goes to show you what kind of deals you can get here.
Nah, don't, bro. Just don't. I won't walk.
There's one of the buses now. I do have to comment though that you do have to be wary, even though the prices are very affordable for these buses. They may not always be up to the same standards as a more well-known company such as Greyhound or Megabus. The last bus, Chinatown bus that I took to Philadelphia had no air conditioning. That made it very uncomfortable. Here I'm walking, or about to walk, under the Manhattan Bridge. And a note, it gets very, very noisy here, which you're about to find out because the whole structure is made of metal. There's a lot of these local shops in. Ow! That was extremely loud just due to the acoustics in this area underneath the bridge. They just vibrate and don't end. So now I'm going to make my way up north. during the Lunar New Year, this area gets very lively. You'll have parades coming through and a lot of celebrations happening. And I will comment that up until the early 1990s, firecracker use was very common here. People would throw them from their doorsteps due to the tradition of firecrackers scaring away the evil spirits. But it was Mayor Giuliani who banned the practice of firecrackers. So not only can you get produce here, but a lot of different clothing too. Now this area under the Manhattan Bridge, you can get very, very affordable produce here. In my opinion, this is one of the freshest places to get produce in Chinatown. Here's a new addition to the Chinatown neighborhood. This plaza at the beginning of the Manhattan Bridge is called the Forsyth Street Plaza. It's a welcome addition and green space for the Chinatown community. I'll just walk up the stairs here to give you a look of what it looks like. Here's the Forsyth Plaza, and ahead of me is the Manhattan Bridge bicycle path. The Manhattan Bridge bicycle path is infamous in this area because there's a blind corner and many people like to overtake going around the corner, and then when someone else does the same thing coming from the other side, it ends up being a very bad result. So I always proceed with extra caution if I'm ever using my bicycle on the bridge here. Here you gotta be very careful because the bicycle traffic is very chaotic. That woman just went onto the crosswalk a little bit, even though the bicycle lane is facing the other way and you're not supposed to go up that way. But it is what it is. To the right of me is Sarah Roosevelt Park. It's a very big park that stretches from Canal Street all the way to Houston Street. It's about 8 blocks long, I would say. So I'm actually not going to take a chance crossing the street here because of how chaotic it is. I'm just going to walk up Forsyth Street alongside Sarah Roosevelt Park. That cyclist already has a whistle ready. I'm sure he knows what's going on up there. So I'm headed up to the northern boundary of Chinatown, which is Grand Street. Looks like someone's having a difficult time cycling. Many people use the Manhattan Bridge to commute back and forth between Brooklyn and Manhattan. Look at this pedestrian just walking out into the crosswalk without looking to the right, almost causing a collision. That pedestrian does not have right of way because she's crossing with the upraised hand. So I'm going to wait for the light before entering the crosswalk. I wouldn't recommend jaywalking here because it's a two-way bicycle lane as well as 2 lanes of traffic. Here's Kung Fu Tea, a very famous bubble tea spot. They have their award on the window there, the second best bubble tea in New York City. Here's another dumpling house. This is a famous roast pork with rice spot. It's closed on Mondays though. So this is the northern end of Chinatown. It's also home to another subway station, the Grand Street subway station, served by the B and D trains. I'll be making a left onto Grand Street. And I'll make my way over to Mulberry Street to show you Chinatown in that area, along with Little Italy. Here's a Vietnamese restaurant in Chinatown. Over there is the Bowery Savings Bank. The bank doesn't exist anymore, but it was a very big bank back in the day. Walk signal is on, so I'm crossing. And this van is stuck in the intersection because the driver didn't read the traffic lights close enough. Here's a sight I don't like to see. A bicycle that is locked up, that is missing the front. No, I think the front wheel's there, but the back wheel's missing and most of the parts are sabotaged. That's a neat looking piece of art inside the herbal tea store. So now I'm only 1 block from Little Italy. To the north along Mott Street are more Italian businesses. To the south is more Chinese. So there's Di Paolo's ricotta and mozzarella. It's an Italian cheese store.
Yeah, that's what
Now, Manhattan's Little Italy isn't the only Little Italy in New York City, although it is the most famous. There are arguably other Little Italys around the 5 boroughs, such as Howard Beach in Queens, Bay Ridge in Brooklyn, Bensonhurst. Staten Island has a lot of Italians. Arthur Avenue in the Bronx is a very, very underknown Little Italy, or unknown. Here's Mulberry Street. And now I'm on Little Italy. Here's the Cannoli King welcoming us to Little Italy, as seen on Rachel Ray and Ryan Seacrest. Capri Pizzeria and Ristorante Bar. Christmas in New York, Little Italy. This is very, very strange. Across the street is Il Piccolo Buffalo. Excuse my Italian, but I'm trying to practice my Italian. I did take some Italian in school. Here's La Nonna, Ristorante Italiano. The highest rated, one of the highest rated restaurants in Little Italy. If you want to get another sense of Little Italy, I do have another video where I walked Little Italy during the San Gennaro festival. Look at that, there's the Ristorante da Gennaro.
we came a couple years ago, all the girls like had right there, like running and kids.
You can get a lot of souvenirs here. Now this is what I mean by Chinatown being within Little Italy or vice versa, because here's a dumpling and noodle house on Mulberry Street. I need to sneeze again. Sorry about that. Here's Buonanotte. Here comes another one. Ristorante Luna. And now we're at the southern end of Little Italy with Canal Street. This gelato looks very good. Well, that concludes it for my walking video of Chinatown and Little Italy. Hope you enjoy. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment below, like this video, and I'll see you next time. And there's an intersection that's blocked. That's New York City for you. See you later.